Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. My name is Mark Dunkerley, like Frank mentioned. I'm currently Director overlooking IT architecture and cybersecurity for Coca-Cola Bottler Sales and Services. And one of the reasons I have the opportunity to be here is about 5 or 6 years ago, and there was a lot of change, within the Coca-Cola system. The opportunity came up for a new company to be built out within the Coca-Cola system. And this was an opportunity to build out a greenfield environment. With that, I was leading the team to build out, design, architect, that solution from the ground up. At the same time, to migrate a 20+ year environment, applications data into this new environment. And the architecture we took was to move into a 100% cloud environment. So I fortunately have been able to be involved in a 100% cloud environment for the previous 5-6 years. And alongside with that architecture was the need to build out and grow, mature, develop a cybersecurity program in parallel, with the architecture build out and so forth. So as we go through the presentation, the content that you're going to see didn't happen overnight. It's a journey. It evolves and it takes time, and there's a lot of lessons learned that have went into this over the years. And my hope is that, what I have went through with the team and the business is something that you are hopefully able to take away, something today with that. On the screen there, I do have LinkedIn. So like most, I am very active on LinkedIn. If you want to, reach out to me, have any questions afterwards, LinkedIn will be the best place to connect with me. So feel free to reach out and connect for any further discussion afterwards. So one important topic before we get into the building of a cybersecurity program is, and I think you've heard it several times in previous sessions, is, self-care. There's more data, coming to light now about mental health in cybersecurity, and that data is real. And us as security leaders have the ability to help influence, prevent, and make sure that, we have our employees, best interest at the forefront. With that, there's some links here that I recommend you may go out and check. But you prioritize your health, make sure you're taking care of your employees as much as possible, make sure you respect, their personal time, they're taking their time off, and that they have a good, healthy work-life balance. I've heard it firsthand, and the perception that cybersecurity, has a 24/7 requirement. I've heard it from those who are thinking about coming in cybersecurity, have decided maybe not to because of some of these perceptions. So we as leaders have the ability to help change this perception and help, make sure that we have, employees, those who work in this industry, within our best interest. Most importantly, you got to take care of your own health first. If you aren't at your best, then you can't be the best for your employees, and this is critical. So step away, disconnect, and refresh. This is important for all of us. And then maybe a little Friday humor. I don't know, anybody else out there find themselves like myself every morning going out to the dark web and searching for their domain admin password, and it seems to work. In all seriousness, this is not far from the truth. This is the world we're living in right now, and this is part of our problem that we got to solve moving forward. It would be nice to eliminate passwords, but I think we all know that's not going to happen anytime soon. But anyway, a little bit of humor, a little reminder. Hope you got a smile on your face when you're seeing this. A reminder that we are human. Hopefully, everybody on this call. And with that, we'll move into the main content. So as we go through this, I don't think I'll be able to justify building a cybersecurity program in 30 minutes. So there is a lot of content. You will see that I will skim over some of the content in the slides, but you will get access to these afterwards. Hopefully, as we go through, this journey, you get an idea of what's involved, but I will have to skip over some of this pretty fast based on the nature of time. But with that, some foundational thoughts as you look at the cybersecurity program. First one is a business partner, and you've heard this multiple times, is build trust. Build trust with the business, build trust with your team. It's critical. You will not be successful without that trust in place. And, you've heard in other sessions, cybersecurity is, not just a cost center similar to what IT was thought. We're in a position to support the business and make them successful, with what we do. When we look at business risk, it is not our job to say no. Our role as leaders is to raise awareness of risk to the business, make them understand, what type of risk we have. Is it high risk? Is it low risk? And then the business is the one that needs to make those decisions on whether we proceed, we accept the risk, or so forth. Resource management, we've heard this multiple times. Right now we're all in a difficult position. Building a team will not happen overnight, so we just have to be patient. Take care of your current employees. Make sure you look after them. Make sure they're getting what they need. Especially those A players. You need to make sure they stick around. The first presentation mentioned it's not that there's a lack of necessarily the talent, but getting people into that we can build up and bring folks from other parts of the business. I'm working with folks in other departments that want to get into cybersecurity. There's an interest there. We just got to make it accessible to them and help them get into cybersecurity and then train them up. So you just need to be patient. You need to open up your options, and this will take care of itself long term. Have a strategic mindset. You got to build awareness and the culture around security. This is not an option anymore. We have to embed security into the entire business as we proceed with cybersecurity. And we have to stay current, be dynamic, and we have to always innovate. The threat actors are 10 steps ahead, and our job is to try and be 11 steps ahead. It's not easy, but that's the position we're in. So with that, I put together my version of potentially what a cybersecurity program looks like from experience, and not one model will fit all. Depending on your industry, the size of your business, small, medium, large enterprise, you could be pretty mature. But when I look at the cybersecurity program, I have 10 different functions here, and these functions, may change next year. They may not be the same as they were 2 or 3 years ago, and that's because we have to be dynamic and we have to stay current. So as I look at these 10 functions, you've got governance, risk, compliance. There's 3 of them: identity access management, vulnerability management, cyber operations, awareness training, vendor risk management, proactive services, architecture, engineering. I believe all these need their own committed function within the cybersecurity program because of what's involved, the time to make these successful, and the amount of resources you will need as part of each of these functions. So with that, I've struggled. I wouldn't say I've struggled, but cybersecurity continues to grow and evolve, and trying to get your arms around everything in cybersecurity is an ongoing task. And I've done a lot of research out there. One of my best references is the SAN Cybersecurity Leadership poster that references all the different tasks and so forth that you can expect to have to manage within cybersecurity. So I did do my own version, and hopefully this helps maybe you all as well. Showcase. Let me just move to the next slide. Showcase exactly what is involved in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is not just an security operating center we have running. Let's run a few vulnerability scans. Let's run awareness training once a year, and we're done. This visual here, that can be shared beyond cybersecurity to leadership, should be able to showcase exactly what we have to deal with when it comes to cybersecurity. And if you look at each of these 10 functions, everything within here is not a small task. They require time, dedication, resources to make each of these successful. So hopefully, this image is something that can help you, especially as you socialize to the broader business. If you're new to cybersecurity within the business, if they're just building a program or trying to mature one, hopefully this can help demonstrate exactly, what is involved to help reduce the risk as much as possible as it relates to cybersecurity. So with that, one of the first things you want to do, whether you're just stepping into a role, even if there's already a cybersecurity program, if there's a mature cybersecurity program, whatever it may be, you need to define a roadmap. You need to learn the business, and you need to understand the risk appetite for that business. And then you need to understand how much risk is there currently, in place that you need to manage. Now, if you look at the roadmap, this is just an example of maybe what I would do. Short term, 0-90 days, you probably want to understand straight away what the big risk is. That moves into still a short term, 3 to 12 months, and then a long term could probably be determined depending on some of those short term items. But these items are not all inclusive, but they are certainly some of the things I would certainly look to do as I moved into a position for a cybersecurity program for the first time. One thing you got to bear in mind, and one thing as leaders that you're probably dealing with, and if we move into leadership position, is you're going to want to get all this done, and then you're going to quickly find out you're not going to have enough time, and you're not going to have enough resources. This is where it becomes prioritization. What is the highest priority versus the least? And you have to work through that, because you're not going to get everything done as planned per schedule. And if you do, great, but most of the time that doesn't happen. That's a reality of the world we live in. And with that as well, organization structure, these are changing constantly with all the different functions and roles. But you see down here, as you build out your organization structure, some strategy behind this, as we struggle with the resource availability right now, you need to look at maybe outsourcing, versus what you have in-house, or some hybrid. And the way I look at outsourcing is, those of you who have, been involved in outsourcing, I think when I look at it from a strategic perspective, you want to, keep the keys to the kingdom in-house resources, identity access management, GRC, architecture, engineering, these sort of roles, you'll want to keep in-house. And then maybe some of the day-to-day tasks, ongoing items, you could look to outsource. Cybersecurity operations 24/7. A lot of companies may not be able to afford to staff a 24/7 operation. So this is why you could look at MSSPs and outsource some of these tasks, and then maybe you have a hybrid in other areas. But just an example right there, and some things to think about as you build out that program. And then, question is, what is your cybersecurity strategy? We can't build a program out by, onboarding every vendor that has a solution available. This is just not realistic. We don't have the resources. We create more vulnerabilities because of all the different vendors we bring in. So we need to have a strategy, select a framework to adopt. Cloud first approach. This is what we did 5-6 years ago, and it's been one of the best decisions we made. Keep your security portfolio to a minimum and reduce your vendor portfolio. I know there's probably vendors out there, but we need to be more strategic. We have to reduce that footprint because we don't have the resources. Every application or vendor continuously need to be updated, managed, governed, and so forth. This is not easy. So the more strategic we can be with our portfolio, the more successful we're going to be to reduce risk. Depending on the size, some large enterprises may need multiple different environments, cloud environments, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. My mindset is, if you're a small or medium, why would you need multiple? To run and manage each of these cloud infrastructures is significant, and to get the resources available is just even harder. As you'll see on the screen, I'm more Microsoft, oriented, just based on my skill set and what I've been involved in over the years. So you tend to see a lot what I'm going to present involves Microsoft. But, from a strategy perspective, pick Microsoft and go with Azure. When you look at, HR or other parts of the business, do they want to bring in Workday and SuccessFactors for the HR system because they want to keep the other company competitive? We need to think in this mindset as we build out our strategy, and we may not be the ones to make the decision, but from a cybersecurity perspective, we certainly should be able to influence some of those decisions. Healthy balance of outsource versus in-source, advocate for platform as a service, software as a service. We got to get out of that infrastructure. It's the biggest liability, from an infrastructure perspective. And then, consolidation of products. Do you have a product that, has additional functionality that you're looking at another vendor to come in and do? If it is, then why can't we just purchase a license for that current solution to turn on that additional functionality? I tend to go with a maybe 80, 90, 20, 10 rule. If I can get 80 or 90% functionality out of a current solution, instead of having to bring another one in, then that meets my needs. When you tend to bring in a solution, you're trying to meet every possible requirement. you tend to find you don't even use all those additional, configurations, whatever it may be. So just some things to think about. And then why a framework? So we're not necessarily required to have a framework, a lot of us. Now, some of us, in industries where it's regulated, there is a requirement. But a lot of us, small or medium, where it may be, may not necessarily need a framework. But the reality is today, we all need to have a framework in place to follow. And this is an option. And what you're also going to see is the more cybersecurity is going to increase their rates and want to know more about what you're doing. You're going to see the likes of cybersecurity insurance, where it may be that they're going to start forcing this on us at some point, I would imagine. So the sooner you can get into understanding what frameworks are available and implementing one, the more successful you'll be at reducing that risk. It lays the foundation of your program. It identifies gaps within your program and team. It helps define your cybersecurity organization structure. It helps reduce risk. It defines your strategy. It will help, like I mentioned earlier, as part of your short term to get this in place. It will help with your longer term roadmap of what you need to work towards. It helps define your budget needs. You're going to need to be able to go to your executive leadership and board and ask for money, and this allows for that. It will hopefully show continuous improvement over time. You have a measurement today, a measurement for next year, and then you continue to grow with that measurement. To measure your success, for leadership and the board, like I just mentioned, it provides transparency. This is critical. We're seeing some instances out there right now where transparency hasn't been made. I think it was an example with Uber not several years ago with a chief security officer, and there's consequences for that. We're now seeing that with Twitter as well. Help prioritize Asian based on identified risk, and to justify our existence. Let's showcase what we're actually doing and all the work we're doing to reduce risk for the organization. And remember, implementing an information security framework is not easy. It is not, it's not going to happen overnight. It'll take a lot of planning with continuous improvement. And remember, cybersecurity is an ongoing and evolving journey. There is no destination to this. And you can see on the screen, NIST is probably more familiar in the, the US region, ISO more globally, and NIST will probably get you started a lot faster, probably a lot easier to go with. But, between NIST and ISO right there is a couple of examples of frameworks. If you're not following the framework, something for you to go towards. I fortunately have architecture, under my management, along with cybersecurity. We're not a large corporate enterprise, within the division I'm working. So I'm fortunate enough where I have a lot more visibility, control over the architecture and cybersecurity together. And what a difference this makes when you have, architecture and cybersecurity together. If you don't have a broader architecture strategy for your organization, you need to put one in place. And cybersecurity needs to be part of that. Cybersecurity and architecture working hand in hand today. You need to define your architecture strategy, scope, goals, and objectives with cybersecurity included. And if you do have an architecture function today or an architecture review board, cybersecurity needs a seat at that table. And make sure it's simple and agile, because the last thing you want is the business to have to avoid it. And as you can see in the bottom left, because we do have a process in place, we do have an architecture review board, as part of the project lifecycle with the business, it is critical that, we get in front of these solutions as they're being onboarded, as they're being reviewed, and more certainly before they're being implemented. As you can see below with the green stars, as part of cybersecurity, any vendor that's onboarded, we are part of that onboarding. We review the vendor, we review the risks, and we have to approve it. And then we go into ARB reviews. We have an ARB checklist that's 2-3 pages long. And the majority of those questions are security related. What type of access do you need to this app? Do you have single sign-on? What is the governance? What type of data are you storing in this? Do you have any integration? Any SFTP, whatever it may be. Is there any regulation? Or, do we have to follow GDPR or CCPA? All these questions come out when you meet with the business and the vendor, and it allows you to better understand and better help, not just architect, but from a cybersecurity perspective, make sure the correct controls are in place before that application or vendor goes live within your environment. So that's critical. And then as we go more specific into cybersecurity architecture, are you thinking about zero trust architecture? And again, I'm going to be referencing the Microsoft zero trust architecture as an example. I really like what they have as a foundation. They list out the technologies into 6 different pillars. As you see on the screen, identities, devices, data, apps, infrastructure, network. And then the example here, you can see, he has all the technologies that have been listed that will help to get to that zero trust architecture. Zero trust architecture assumes breach and verifies each request as though it originates from an open network. This is critical. It requires a multi-layered approach. This is the only approach we can really take moving forward. And never trust, always verify. This is my tagline that I use now all the time, is never trust, always verify. There's some other good references, NIST, CISA, as it relates. Some of the vendors, Cisco have their own power law. Some of them have 5 pillars, 4 pillars of the different technologies, but you get a sense of zero trust architecture is definitely a form of architecture that you want to build into your cybersecurity program. And with that, here's an example of how I have approached zero trust architecture. Again, build out a roadmap. The zero trust architecture is not going to happen overnight. It's not a destination. This is also a journey. It is a strategy, and it's not a solution. We may have some vendors out there who claim they can provide a zero trust for your environment, but that is not the case. It requires multiple technologies, whatever it may be, to make this successful. And if you look at the roadmap, I have a couple of examples of different ways you may want to approach this. As you look at Microsoft, again, they go from traditional, advanced, and modern. And if you look at identities, my traditional could be Active Directory, working with ADFS, Microsoft Identity Manager. That's where I am today, for example. And then as I get to advanced, maybe I set up in AD Connect, that allows me then presence into the cloud. So now I can start using some of the more advanced features with single sign-on with maybe conditional access. So now I'm, more advanced, but my ideal place to be is truly modernized, where I'm leveraging 100% cloud as an IDP, leveraging single sign-on, I'm getting to passwordless, identity protection and everything that comes along would be how I would get there. Another example in devices would be maybe take a look at the technologies you have today and how much of a percentage are you using them. And over the next several years, how do you get to 100% of the technologies that will truly give you that zero trust architecture? So just some idea here of zero trust architecture. This should be a big part of your strategy, part of your cybersecurity program. It's critical that, we never trust no matter what, and we always verify whether you're on network, off network, or wherever it may be. So we've covered the architecture side, and I'm going to cover in a little bit more detail 2 of the most important functions, I believe, as current state. Again, this changes, with the market and the threats out there. But this is probably top of my list: user awareness, training, and testing. So our users are our greatest asset, but they are our greatest weakness when it comes into cybersecurity. And as unfortunate as it may be, there is an example today. If you've been following the media, unfortunately with Uber, again, the details, we don't know the details to an extent, but the initial, the initial media is showing it to be that a user with an Uber, was social engineered from somebody to be able to get access to their account and then get access to the network, and then from there they were able to penetrate, deeper into the network. Again, that's just initial release, but this goes back to our users, and our users being our greatest asset. And here you see some statistics right here. I'm not going to go through the statistics, but statistics don't lie. This is not a one-time event anymore, this program. This is not a checkbox to say that I've sent out my training once a year, I'm done, we'll wait for next year. This is an ongoing and evolving program. You need to relate to your users and make sure the program is personal to your users as well. I'm finding one of the most successful ways to get engagement from users is relate to their personal life, to their personal banking, to their finances, whatever it may be. But that then can help apply to the business when they understand, the risk at hand. Use the program to build a culture around cybersecurity. This is not an option anymore. And use the program to build bring visibility to the overall cybersecurity program. And here's an example that I put together here. This can be done at the beginning of the year. Q1 training, phishing campaigns, other activities, quarterly town halls, policy attestation. And again, repeat this every quarter, test your users, see where you are. If there's a big, campaign that you're seeing out there from threat actors, you can be dynamic and maybe change this up to help, with if there's some vision going on, you could update this to do some vision training and so forth. And then one program we launched this year, as you can see in the middle, was a Cybersecurity Awareness Week for the very first time. This was a week dedicated to us communicating out with different themes each day and setting up meetings continuously throughout the week to allow the business to engage and learn more from us. And it was a huge success. We were gaining 50+% attendance on all of our meetings from the business. So something to think about. There's a sample program there, on the screen. This is the level we need to get with security awareness and training. The next big one, do you manage your vendor's cybersecurity risk? The reality is we no longer have full control of our data. Every application we onboard is a SaaS vendor for the most part. The business is continuously onboarding more SaaS vendors, more applications, and everything is living in the cloud, and it's not in our control anymore. You need to build a program dedicated to vendor risk management if you don't have one. Again, there's some statistics there, and I'm not going to read through them, but the statistics speak volume. You need to use statistics to help as you build these programs out. You need a centralized vendor app inventory to efficiently manage your vendors. Can anybody on this call say that they know every application and vendor that's within the environment? I would highly likely doubt it, because this is a very difficult, challenging thing to do, and especially as you look at, some of the shadow IT and so forth. It's very hard to get your arms around, but this program will help you get there. Build relationships with high-risk vendors. Know who the security team is from those vendors so you can reach out to them and ask them questions. And if there's any incidents, you have direct access to them. Tier your vendors based on risk. Ensure cybersecurity is involved in contract reviews. You need to get in early and ask the questions to the vendor. What type of data are you going to be storing? Are you going to be, integrated with our environment? This allows you to understand, do I need a SaaS agreement? Do I need a data protection agreement? Just a security exhibit, whatever it may be, but you need to help procurement and legal to make sure that nothing is missed when we build the contracts out, and contracts that give you the right to be notified of a breach within 24, 48 hours. You have the right to audit them. All these things that could be missed, then you have no rights if there is a breach or incident. Work closely with procurement and legal. I think we heard it previously. Become best friends, with your legal team. And then you have an example down here of a high-level process that may help, but, as you onboard a new vendor, what are the requirements for a review? Are they SaaS? Is there personal information involved? Are they scoring a C or below in our score grade system that we use for our vendors? If they are, then they go into a full-blown review. They're a tier 1 vendor. From there, what do you want to see? I want to see, their SIG, CSA, some form of questionnaire. Do they have a SOC 2? Do they have an ISO? Now be careful, because vendors might say I have a SOC 2 or ISO, then, that covers everything. But for the most part, SOC 2 or ISO, maybe not, but, if there's PCI, they only cover certain parts of the, the environment. So it's critical that you, do all your due diligence. You want to see those penetration results overview, the plans, policies, whatever it may be. You need to do your due diligence. And then once you've done that, you can sign off. And then you can continuously monitor that vendor. There's tools out there to continuously monitor, like, if they've been breached, if they fall below grade, then you can re-engage with the vendor. If not, then you can go through your annual review. If they don't meet any criteria, you can then, document that risk, and it becomes an executive leadership decision if they want to onboard a risky vendor, and they need to accept that. So as we move into the other parts of the program, I could spend all day going through each function. We've covered 3 major components: architecture, cybersecurity awareness, vendor risk management. And then, here we have the remaining functions. I don't have, enough time to go through in detail, but I'm going to highlight some specific areas, that I highly recommend, within each of these functions. Vulnerability management, How are you understanding the vulnerability landscape? Are you signing up for vulnerability alerts? If not, CISA is an amazing example. If you didn't receive the alerts this morning that there were 6 known exploits out there in the wild, you'll want to get signed up straight away. Yesterday, there was 2, Apple and Google, I believe yesterday. Today was Microsoft Linux. These are known exploits. This should be top of your list for remediation. Go out there and sign up. It's free. Know all your assets. This is becoming critical. We need to know everything that's out there. Install updates as soon as possible. Unfortunately, we can no longer wait, a month to push patches. You've got to, weigh up the risk of maybe an application being impacted versus being breached, by getting updates out there. Proactive services, execute annual, internal, external pen tests, threat hunts. You got to do this on an annual basis. Conduct both executive and technical tabletop exercises. This is not an option. You've heard it many times. You need to be best prepared. The best prepared we are as leaders, the better we can respond, the faster we can get the business up and running, and the faster they can, get on with their day. And the mindset that I continue to remind my leadership is it's not a matter of if, but when. And when this happens, we need to be prepared. Have a well-documented cyber incident response plan with playbooks. And that's part of your, going through your executive and technical tabletop exercises with this incident response plan. Everybody needs to be familiar with it. Security operations. Ensure you have 24/7 operations. That's not an option these days. Use automation as much as possible. Artificial intelligence. Bring it all in play. Ensure you're feeding all security-related logs to the SOC. And if you don't know all your assets, you're not going to be doing this. Identity access management, ensure MFA is enabled and strive for passwordless. You can enable MFA and use additional technologies to not inconvenience your users. For example, conditional access. If I'm on a trusted device in a trusted location, then don't enforce MFA. But as soon as you step outside those boundaries, you require MFA. And then passwordless. The technology is available now. Leverage identity protection and block suspicious activity. You need to be using this technology. If I have a user who sits in New York, and then all of a sudden, an hour later, somebody's trying to log into LA, you need to be blocking that account straight away with no questions asked, because that is suspicious activity and somebody trying to compromise that account. Deploy privilege access capabilities. If you're not doing PAM for on-premise or PIM in the cloud, you need to be doing this now with just enough or just-in-time access. Governance, risk compliance. Again, this is the framework over your whole program. Make sure you got a framework for gaps and audit for validation, and then continue to audit. Make sure you have a risk register. Use a spreadsheet if you don't have, an application first, but you need to be documenting your risk and have a well-documented strategy and roadmap. And with that, how do you bring all this together? How do you showcase, to executive leadership and the board what you're doing? I've went through several versions of these, and this is my latest. Again, everyone's different, but I'm trying to capture the program on one slide that allows you to show exactly what is involved in cybersecurity. Again, this is all dummy data and is a sample, but what's your external attack surface? What's your vendor's risk? What's my vulnerability risk profile? Am I improving? Am I remediating? What's my users looking like out there? Do I have compliance audit? How's my SOC looking? What am I doing with my proactive services? Am I becoming remediated? Where's my current framework and how do I compare from last year? And then also, what's the current threat out there? The threat below is from CIS, a great reference. And then you can build in the risk for your own company to build your own, threat status. So this is critical. How do you report out? And this is, something that feel free to take away and, customize and use for yourself if you don't have something today. And then with that, a little bit of a bonus, ransomware preparation checklist that may come in handy. This is something myself and my co-author included in our recent book, Matt Tombarello. So, the list here is from a couple of, sources, CISA and NIST. And then we also, added some of our own in, but, 2 very important areas here. Number 1, protect. Again, some of these are trivial, but go through this checklist, and the more you have this in, the more it will help reduce the risk of a ransomware happening. And then the most important to me is best practices for responding. You need to have all these checkboxes checked off. You need to be ready, because it's not a matter of if, unfortunately, but when an incident will happen, and how we can react is really going to show, us as leaders and test us. So with that, I thank you for your time, and hopefully you were able to get something out of this. And Frank, I'll hand it back over to you. So thank you.